Morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of Anaphylaxis campaign webinars. This webinar is special because it's taking place during our Anaphylaxis campaign awareness week, which is a very big event for us. For example, every single member of the Anaphylaxis campaign staff are walking 140,000 steps, 10,000 steps a day during last week and this week to represent the 14 allergens. And I can personally tell you, I'm finding it extremely challenging. But we are enjoying this week, and it's great to have Andrew with us this morning. The title of the webinar is Food Allergy Patients and the Need for a Proper Diagnosis. And we thought this was a great one to launch our webinar program this week. Now, Andrew Williams will be known to many of you, and he's a great friend of the Anaphylaxis campaign. So it's great to have him doing this for us today. Just a little bit about Andrew. He's a consultant nurse and had 25 years experience in the field of allergy. And he was a nurse specialist, both in London and also in the Southeast. He's a past BSACI council member, and he's been a member of a number of IACI committees, in particular the Allied Health and Immunotherapy Committee. He also advised on the Allergy NICE guidelines, and he also helped develop a comprehensive NHS England and IQAS approved allergy service at an East London hospital before moving to Guy's St Thomas's to expand the team there and the scope of the allergy service at Guy's and St Thomas's. He's retired, though he looks far too young to me to be retired, but he continues as an honorary clinical nurse specialist for Mid and South Essex Hospitals NHS Trust, running audits and research. Andrew's given many lectures, and I'm sure some of you will have seen some of those, both at the SACI, the Allergy Show, and a part of doctors and nurses training days. And in addition to that, he's obviously been a speaker for us in the past as well. So welcome, Andrew. And without further ado, I'll hand you over to do your presentation.
Thank you very much, Lynn. What a really lovely introduction. I'm just going to share the screen for my talk. Okay. Just one point on a bit of legality. I'm a former nurse consultant. I am not registered at the moment, but that's just in over the last few months. I don't think that changes anything really on a practical level today. It's great to have this opportunity, and I really thank the Anaphylaxis campaign for this, particularly in Allergy Awareness Week. It is a really important week for who have allergy or work with you who have allergies. And it is an opportunity to raise the profile again of this. Well, we are making progress, I think, with the press and becoming a little bit more out there and understood, but there is such a long way to go. So being in this field for 25 years, there has been progress, and I need to be positive about it because there's been a lot of progress in terms of treatments, understanding, different ways of diagnosing people. There is a little bit more ability around the country, and not just in London, to see people who may have allergy. But there are still the same frustrations, I think, with a lot of my colleagues in primary care who haven't had allergy training. It hasn't been part of their normal medical training, though that is finally changing now. So things will get better in a few years, we would hope very much. I wanted to talk about food allergy today, or certainly the diagnosis of it, because there's a lot of confusion out there. Particularly, there can be a lot of misinformation on social media, especially. Some very well-meaning people can unfortunately give the wrong information out, and you'll end up wasting time, money, and occasionally it can be actually dangerous for yourself or your children if you follow certain paths that don't have a scientific basis. So let's have a look at the sort of the size of the problem in the UK. Well, it is a huge problem. There, 40–50% of people now are being diagnosed with hay fever, that sort of respiratory allergy, with the problems that causes, especially for asthma, that they may already have. And it can make it much worse in the summer months or even in the spring months now, with a lot more tree pollen around, a lot more people sensitized to these pollens, right through the summer with weed pollens as well. Now, one thing with food allergy is that though it is increasing, it isn't as big as we actually as a population think it is. So in one study, 20% of the population said that they were food allergic, or they thought they were food allergic. But when those people, representative of that sample, were tested with a double-blind food challenge, so some people got the food that they thought they were allergic to, and some people got a fake, it was found that only 2% of that 20% of the population were actually allergic. So there is a bit of a misperception. So in one sense, it's not a big problem across the population as a whole, but for the people who have it, and obviously 2% of 67 million people is a huge number, that is a definite problem for not just them, their families, schools, workplaces, but also the health service. And therefore, governments need to take it seriously and put funding where they need to for food allergy. So the actual the rate of food allergy with children in early years is about 5%, between 3 and 5%. Different studies will tell you different things. So let's say 5%. Now, as many of you will know, to get an allergy diagnosis, it can be pretty tricky. Problem one is that GPs don't have the knowledge. With all greatest respect to them, who have to be generalists and have to know about so many different things. They currently don't have much teaching in it unless they've been on a specific course, and Anaphylaxis campaign, BSACI, and other organizations can step in and help them with that, but not on the scale that it needs to be. So you go to your GP. If they don't have the sort of knowledge that they would require, they may not know what to do with the problem that you do have. They may not appreciate the seriousness of it, and they may not know where to refer you onto to a specialist unit. There are, thankfully, more specialist units, allergy clinics in what we call tertiary centres, so very specialised centres, and in fact, a lot more now in secondary care, so in district general hospitals. There's one in my local hospital. It's not a tertiary centre, but they have people there who are interested, and they have been on training courses, they go to the conferences, they do research, and so they've really bought into allergy. So you get a really good service where you've got people like that who have this interest. But not all hospitals have the capability or, unfortunately, someone with the interest to do that. So still a problem. We'll talk about how to access places a little bit later on. And so food allergy. The main thing with this is not testing. It is the history. What actually happened to you or your child? What happened first? What happened next? What happened before? What treatment did you give? So with food allergy, the sorts of symptoms that we might be expecting are asthma type symptoms, difficulty breathing, wheezing, swelling of the lips, the tongue, or any part of the body, in fact. Voice changes. So with an adult, they get a much deeper voice. With a child, a toddler, they may not be able to vocalize what they're feeling, and a lot will kind of scratch at their neck because they can feel this itchiness inside and maybe swelling. Reddening of the skin, maybe raised bumps on the skin, urticaria, sneezing, runny nose. People may feel lightheaded. You may have people fainting or collapsing. Children can go quite floppy, and this can happen very quickly. Eye itching, throat itching, as I said, but also things that you can't actually see, but certainly adults can tell us about. I've had over my career a number of people, not many, I think it's about 3 over that time, who have been developing anaphylaxis there in front of me, and that's been to do with some of the more advanced tests or treatments that we've been doing at the time. But they can have this fear and a sense of doom, and I've had people say, "I'm going to die," and that's really quite frightening and quite a good sign of that. This is serious. We need to treat this straight away. So before you go to your GP or your specialist doctor, you need to, it really helps if you've written all this down and the time scales involved. So how long did it take from the food being eaten, if that's what it was, to symptoms starting, to it getting worse, etc. In terms of food, you need to write down every food or everything that's gone in to the child or adult's mouth, liquids, etc. And have all those down on paper. Where did it happen? Was it in a restaurant? Was it in the toilets of a restaurant? Was it at home? Was it at a party, child's party? What medications are they on regularly? Or what medications did you give that day? Perhaps you gave a painkiller an hour before they had their meal. And we need to look at, was it the painkiller, or was it the food, or was it something else? Were they exercising? This is particularly with adults who can develop an exercise-induced anaphylaxis just from running. Sometimes it's that they have, it's quite relatively rare, where they have some reaction to wheat, and usually they can eat bread, no problem. And they can exercise, no problem. But when they do the two together within an hour or two, they've had a BAP for breakfast, and an hour later they'll go running. They can develop this strange combination of exercise and wheat-induced anaphylaxis. So there are multiple things that you need to consider before you go to see your GP or specialist. Obviously, age, whether they're a smoker or not, family history of allergies as well as other diseases, but especially allergies. Did they have did mum and dad have hay fever? Certainly children are much more likely to have hay fever if both parents have it. And also, we talked about medication. So let's say you do get an appointment for a specialist. Now, at the moment, unfortunately, because of COVID, the waits are longer than they were. When I was last working at Guy's and St Thomas's, it was between a 4 and 6 week wait from the GP writing to us being able to see you. So relatively short, though it's still a month to 6 weeks, but that's pretty good. Excuse me while I just try to adjust the light in here so you can see me. Right. So the first thing you're going to take all your paperwork, and they're going to ask you questions. They'll be very thankful that you've taken the effort and the time to write all these details down. Very helpful indeed for the clinician. One of the things that they may do, once they've perhaps ascertained that there is an allergic problem, and can I just stop at this point and say, 50% of the patients that I saw in clinics coming into specialists for the first time, 50% would go out not with an allergic diagnosis, because allergy wasn't the problem, it was something else. We can talk about that a little bit more later, why that is and what other things were they that weren't allergy. But if it's looking like, say, quite obvious, so there were 2 occasions when you had peanuts, and within 5 to 10 minutes, you got an itching mouth, swelling of the lips, felt sick or vomited. And that happened on both times that you had peanuts, and you haven't had them since, then it looks like, well, let's try and confirm that or rule it out. So we can go to skin prick tests. That photo is when I was a little bit younger, no grey hair, but look, the photo's being cropped anyway. Anyway, so skin prick tests on a child or adult, they can be done from probably about 3 months old, a specialist centre, and they tend to be done on a baby or toddler on the back. If it is preferable to a blood test. We'll come to blood tests in a minute. Skin tests and blood tests for allergy, they do the same thing, but obviously in a different way. Skin tests are cheaper. You can get the results within 15 minutes. And also, while you're having the test applied, it's a great opportunity for the specialist or whoever in the team to be able to chat with you some more and give some education, answer your questions to a certain degree about the tests, how reliable they are or not reliable, and what might happen next. Now, if you have been taking antihistamines up to the date of your test or on the day of the test, then the skin prick test will not work. It will give a false answer. So you need to stop antihistamines at least 3 days beforehand. Don't put any creams in your skin or on your arms on that day. Otherwise, it just delays the process. And it can cause the test to be more difficult to do. If someone's got eczema, say severe eczema, and it's on their skin, all over their body, say, then again, the test cannot be done properly because it'll all get confused with the eczema. We wouldn't want to aggravate that in any case. If there is some skin, say particularly on the back, that is free from eczema, then perhaps it could be done there. So The other reason why you may not be able to have a test is if you have something called skin writing, or we call it dermatographism. So this is a friend who very kindly, some years ago, stopped taking antihistamines. And the antihistamines would suppress this sort of rash on his back. It was very, very itchy indeed. And it would happen every day, clothes rubbing on his skin, belt buckles. If anyone touched him, we had to use any sort of machinery or anything really, he'd get these raised wheals on his skin, and anywhere, it would happen anywhere. So he had to take, to prevent this, a daily antihistamine, which for him was cetirizine, 10 milligrams. So he stopped taking them for 3 days so that I could get this picture. What a kind young man. And I've used this picture over the years because it's one of the best ones I've seen. So if you have this, you can't really have skin tests because each little metal device which pushes the drop of the allergen through the skin would come up in a mark. So all of the tests would come up, and therefore they'd be all false positive, probably be false positives, all of them. So people who have this eczema all over themselves, or dermatographism, or have taken antihistamines, they can have instead a blood test where a blood sample is taken. And, you know, we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to even introduce a needle into people unnecessarily. So skin prick tests we prefer that. But sometimes, obviously, we can't use them. So we need to take a small sample of blood, get sent off, and it can come back quite quickly now, much quicker than 10 years ago. So in just 3 days, perhaps. And we can look at, we have to say on the blood test, what are we looking for? So we have to specify, can you check for egg allergy, well, egg sensitivity, milk sensitivity, peanut sensitivity, grass pollen sensitivity, etc. And you get the report back in a few days, and then you can you get a letter through the post with the results on. Okay. So what not to use in allergy? We need to stick to the scientific tests. Any of these tests here, some of them you see them online. They'll be advertised couched in scientific language, and they will seem very convincing that yes, this is something that would work for us. But it's not at all. And we really advise you not to take any of these things because they don't work, they're confusing, and any test without the history, without the consultation, without somebody who knows what the tests mean in relationship with the history, they're not going to give you the right information, and you're going to be led right down the garden path to goodness knows where. This is really for your own safety and your comfort, your children's proper diagnosis and treatment. I want to look at a few of these. The most, I think, irritating one is the IgG test. Now, these people, a lot of them, they really believe in what they're doing. What they're doing is not illegal, but they do not have a scientific basis of research to back it up. And when they do, it's very, very weak and cannot be relied on. It's worth looking at differences between food allergy and intolerance, I think, at this point. So food allergy is always involves the immune system. It's an expected, a well-described response that you'd have with the type of symptoms that we've been through already. The symptoms will be the same, more or less, the same types of symptoms, time and time again, whenever you eat that particular food, they're immediate. So Immediate is kind of within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, certainly up to an hour. Now, symptoms, as we described earlier, that happen after an hour, you really it stretches it a bit with, is it allergy? And if they're more than 2 hours, well, no, definitely it really can't. It's not immediate allergy. It's not how the body works with the immune system reacting to substances, say foods or pollens. So 1 hour, if it happens within 1 hour of eating the food, then it's much more likely to be an allergic type reaction. Food allergy, as we know, can be life-threatening. And we compare those things with intolerance. Now, it's not known, a lot of these things, how they work, but real intolerance like lactose intolerance, it's a non-immune reaction. Symptoms can be varied from stomach upsets to feeling a bit bloated, headaches, itchiness, perhaps in random places, tend to be delayed. So a lot of people will say, well, I had red cabbage on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, I started getting these strange symptoms. They're really uncomfortable. Most importantly, it's not life-threatening. There is no reliable test for food intolerance, only for the specific ones, say like lactose intolerance. There's a breath test for that, and that's generally used by the gastroenterology department and not the allergy department. I'll pause for breath for a moment, if I can just have a sip of water. Thank you. As I mentioned, IgG tests, the bane of my life, really. They were used an awful lot, probably up until about 10 years ago, when I think the advertising authorities body ruled against a company that had won Queen's Award for exports and had been doing very well with their product. So let's talk about IgG. IgG is something, it's a real thing that is in our bodies. It is present in healthy people. Most of us, we can find in many people who are otherwise healthy, who can eat wheat with no problem at all, no symptoms, no nothing. You can find IgG antibody to wheat gluten. So if you find it in people who've got symptoms of intolerance, but you find it in people who don't have symptoms of intolerance, then it's not really telling us anything, apart from it seems like it's an antibody that anybody can have. Also, with immunotherapy treatment for hay fever, which is where we inject people with increasing amounts of pollen for grass pollen hay fever, or house dust mite for house dust mite rhinitis, what's been found is that the IgG level in the body increases significantly. And so it is thought that IgG may not be having a bad effect on our bodies and causing us to have symptoms, but actually it has a protective effect against allergy. So a few years ago or so, I was involved with Which magazine. We looked at a number of unconventional tests for allergy, and the IgG one, we sent off a sample of blood from a volunteer on a Tuesday to this company, and we sent off a sample of blood from the same person the next day. So we were under a different name. So we got the two results back, and they were vastly different. They were told they were intolerant to probably about 80 different foods, not just foods though as well, fizzy water. And the next day it was say it was peanuts on the first day, then the next day they weren't intolerant to peanuts on the second sample of blood. So that just shows how unreliable and unscientific that test actually is. Hair analysis, you can send this away. All these things are on the internet. So medically speaking, you can use hair for one thing, that is to check if someone's been exposed to heavy metals, say they've been a miner, and they can have a toxicity, they can get all sorts of dreadful debilitating diseases, and testing the hair, you can actually find the heavy metals in there and identify them. But for anything else, certainly not for food allergy, it doesn't do anything. Also, if you think of your hair, it grows pretty slowly. And if you take the hair sample from the ends, that hair represents probably quite a few weeks ago or even months ago. So how is there going to be remnants of food protein in this hair that is so old? Another one which has been quite popular in the past, it's been used in pharmacies, I know, back in the 80s. You can still see these, I think, in some pharmacies, unfortunately, but it's a bit like a lie detector. It's called Vega testing. What happens is the practitioner has some electrodes. They're attached to the patient, one hand, and the practitioner inserts a glass vial containing a dilution of one or more test substance, say foods. And the practitioner tells the patient what is being measured and records any change in the electrical impedance on this rather scientific looking electronic machine in front of the patient. So what's actually happening, it's a bit like a lie detector where the electrical resistance of the skin varies when stress, such as in the case of a lie detector, lying, or in this test case, when they're given a list of substances testing. So there'll be different stresses which will change the electrical impedance and therefore change the result. Evaluations of these machines across numbers and numbers of people found that they were unable to detect allergy in people who were genuinely allergic to foods or, say, cat dander, and had those proven by skin tests and blood tests. So you pay your £100 and you've got a load of gobbledygook rubbish answers. So try to avoid that. Another one, which thankfully quite a few years ago now stopped being used as a something that they used to show up at the Allergy show. There was a change of management at the Allergy show some years ago, and they got rid of this kinesiology type thing, which is quite popular in chiropractic places with their practitioners of chiropractic medicine. I'm not going to knock the chiropractors because I know that they can really help people with some musculoskeletal injuries. People report that they've had a lot of help from them. But this particular aspect is nonsense. So what they do is they test your muscles for weakness. You're supposed to hold out your arm like this, and the practitioner applies a counter pressure, so they'll push up, and they'll be given a something to hold in their hand, a food in a glass vial or plastic vial, and if the practitioner feels that there's weakness when they push against the arm, they will diagnose you as being allergic to the substance in the vial. Unfortunately, there's no convincing evidence that this is diagnosing allergy in any way. I mean, it does even seem a bit nonsensical even just talking about it, but it is nonsensical. Another one looks very scientific, leukocytotoxic test, when they look at the shape of white blood cells when they're mixed with a suspected allergen. And again, though this has been looked at, there's no mainstream evidence that these tests actually work. So we need to keep away from them. They will give you the wrong results. You'll get the wrong treatment. You'll avoid foods that you don't need to avoid. And that's a huge thing for all of us, but for children in particular. Pregnant or breastfeeding mothers, we need a full, balanced diet, and unnecessarily cutting out foods is not good. We have, I think, just one more of these tests, which involves bringing a substance that the patient or the practitioner suggests is allergic next to the skin, and they measure the waveform of the pulse, and that's usually done at the wrist. And again, there's disproven in many ways, no clear, no solid, no reliable evidence. So don't waste your money, don't waste your time, and don't spoil your health. These, when we talk about these things, it's just like it could be just stories, and they don't really mean anything. They're kind of so disassociated from ourselves right now. But there was a case I dealt with. It was a guy who'd been told through one of these tests that he was allergic to a number of foods. A tragic case. I saw him a number of times when he came into hospital. Also, he had some psychological issues as well, but he stopped eating so many foods that, this is a guy in his early 40s, a few years ago, he died. He just died because he wasn't eating, because his electrolytes in his body were completely up the chute, because of this these test results, which he really believed in and thought that if he did eat these things, he'd be harmed. He just took it so far, he died. I mean, obviously it's not, there were psychological problems, as I say, but that's how far this can get with adults even. So I think I need to be winding up quite soon. So symptoms in allergic disease, anaphylaxis, which we know about, food allergy, allergic rhinitis, asthma, drug allergy, urticaria or angioedema, where there's rashes or swelling, stomach symptoms, and allergies for children as well. So before I'm cut off, because I think there are some questions, true or false? Anaphylaxis leading to death is increasingly common in the UK with food allergy. Do you think that's true or false? Anaphylaxis leading to death is increasingly common in the UK with food allergy. Second question, people with a history of anaphylaxis to a food should carry 2 adrenaline auto-injectors at all times. Okay, so let's go for the answers. So recent study showed that increasing emergency room treatment for food allergy driven anaphylaxis. So anaphylaxis is increasing. The numbers of people attending hospital are increasing, and it's been a phenomenal increase over the last 10 years. Now, deaths, however, and this is some great news, they are reduced. They have been reducing over the past 20 years. They're still too high. In the UK, it's approximately 10 deaths per year, which is, too many. They almost don't need to be any at all. And they're all very tragic. It does perhaps seem that there are more deaths because the press have really got hold of, they seem to care about it suddenly, that there are deaths. And I've had a number of young people reported in the last 3 years, and also the ongoing story for the families, and and the research that they're trying to get done. There have been changes in the law, which is a good thing to come out of something so awful. And those changes will, I believe, protect people. But we need to continue with that. We need to continue to raise the profile and argue for more safety, more acknowledgement that it exists and that it is a real problem. Okay, we need to balance that with the deaths against deaths in car accidents, because though you can have this hanging over you as a person or as a child or as a family, anaphylaxis, potential for anaphylaxis, I really believe it's good to be able to live your life free of fear. The fear is probably going to be there in the background all the time, and that can be helpful. But if it crushes the rest of your life or your child's life, then that I'd think that allergy is one. If we are like that, it's not easy not to feel the fear, but there are ways to get around it, and there are people who we can talk to about. There's the anaphylaxis campaign, for instance, and there are many others, but it's kind of finding those people is the thing, isn't it? And realizing that we don't have to live like this. This is something serious, but we can manage it. And with support, we can manage it. I hope that makes sense. So this is a piece of work that the Food Anaphylaxis in the United Kingdom hospital admissions and fatalities came from, which was February this year, I believe. And you can see on this, I can't actually see the, oh, here we are. If you can see my arrow, my cursor, you can see this purple line going down, and that's the deaths. Food to food allergy going down. So yeah, what is anaphylaxis? Who gets it? There's my son and his girlfriend there a few years ago. So anaphylaxis is severe life-threatening allergic reaction which involves the whole body, and we can recognize it by really quick, rapid, life-threatening airway, breathing, or circulation problems. Circulation problems, I'm talking about the heart and the blood flowing in the body. The fluid in the veins can get pushed out into the surrounding tissues, and that's why people lose their blood pressure and can faint. This is our friend Ruth, who posted this publicly, and is her having a reaction to a food that was hidden in a meal that she had, even though she had talked about that to the chef and the waiter. These commoner in females, affects children and young people, sort of teens, more than anybody else. The increase, there is an increase, a definite increase. And this is quite old, from about 20 years ago, but it does give an example of, it does show what sort of things are causing the fatalities. So this is over a 10-year period. Stings, mainly from wasps, nuts, food confirmed, milk, fish, chickpeas, crustaceans, banana, and snail. Not sure if these foods caused the death. Sherbet, nectarine, grape, strawberry, so quite unusual things, but anything that's protein can cause anaphylaxis. Drugs is a huge, is the main cause. So drugs, not food, drugs. So with injected drugs, it can be just a few minutes, 4 minutes until cardiac arrest. It can be longer. Foods start causing problems a little bit later on, 10 to 20 minutes. The biggest group of people who died at about 20, 30 minutes. But again, I don't really want to kind of emphasize the worst part of it. We have to acknowledge that it's real, but this is for a very, very small amount of people, and there's things that you can do, and you can get all of the help that you really need from an anaphylaxis campaign. They are excellent. I know I don't have shares in them. I admire them as a charity and a group of people who are passionate about this, and their services have changed and increased over the years. They are very responsive. They're involved in government policy, changing government policy, talking to ministers. They're in the rooms with the ministers, getting things moved on. So with anaphylaxis, you've got airway swelling, throat or tongue swelling, perhaps difficulty breathing, swallowing, sensation that throat's closing up. I think I've talked about that, and children itching their necks, hoarse voice or stridor, shortness of breath, breathing quickly, an audible wheeze, so you can hear this wheeze. Patients becoming tired because of the difficulty in breathing, and then latterly, if you're not doing anything, like i.e. not giving adrenaline, then they get confused and maybe have purple lips or blue lips. Problems with circulation, just to look at them, they're pale, might feel clammy, increased pulse rate, low blood pressure, feeling faint, etc. Now, this is an ABC thing, so airway, breathing, circulation. D is disability, so this sense of impending doom, panic, and decreased consciousness levels. E, exposure, and we're looking for skin changes, which can be the first thing that happens, maybe around the mouth or neck, could be hidden under the clothes. So we do need to look under the clothes, if appropriate. Yeah, or in most cases, you can see skin changes. Swelling. Autoadrenaline injectors. At the moment in the UK, there are only two that you can obtain, two different brands, manufacturers. One is the ubiquitous EpiPen, and also there's Jext. You can order, and please, if you need one of these, if you're prescribed one of them and you haven't got a trainer pen already, you can actually get them. The addresses are there, but you can get these via the Anaphylaxis campaign website, where they'll have a link to the companies. Okay, you need to train yourself. If you're the person who is allergic, you need to train other people in the house, people at school, people in the workplace. Choose someone that you trust. You need to practice regularly with a training device. It doesn't have any drug or needle in it, but it's a good practice for when, if ever, you do end up having some difficult symptoms. When you do receive one of these, sign up for the renewal reminders, the manufacturer's app or website. Actually, Jext has an app which you can download onto your phone. It is very comprehensive, simple to use. You can even directly ring 999 from it. It has a video on it, show you what to do in the moment. Yeah, and it's there with you all the time. You don't have to carry the papers around saying how to give your Jext. But Jext or EpiPen, they both do the same thing. There's a little video. Oh no, that's not going to work actually. I haven't got the settings on Zoom for that. So back to the websites. This is the EpiPen one, loads of information, living with severe allergy. The Jext website, there's a number of other resources on the app as well. So I had to rush through the last few bits there, but I want to thank Anaphylaxis campaign again. I've used their leaflets, their teaching over the 25 years. I once did an adrenaline pen demonstration with David Redding, who was one of the founders of the Anaphylaxis campaign. That was years and years ago, but great organization. Thank you very much indeed for today, and I hope that's been helpful. For any questions?
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that absolutely brilliant presentation. Lots and lots of content there. And though Andrew has said some of the things in his presentation in an extremely polite way, sometimes at the Anaphylaxis campaign, we're less polite because we get so frustrated by some of the individuals we come across who've been given a false diagnosis or excluding so many foods because they have used one of those diagnostic mechanisms, those rogue tests that Andrew so articulately mentioned in his presentation. So thank you for that, Andrew. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
We've now got time, I think, for a few questions, but not to worry. We've had a lot of questions coming in, and what we will do is we will put them together in a Q&A, which we will send to Andrew, and he will carry on working for us and give us answers to those questions, and then we will put those questions, the answers, on our website. So, and also the presentation will appear on our website so members can see that. So thank you very much. We've got time for a couple of questions, Andrew. So without further ado, I'll ask the first one, because we've had quite a few in, as you know. And the first one I'd like to ask you is, my 2-year-old is anaphylactic to cow's milk and is due to start nursery. The nursery's been really helpful, well, that's good to hear. And yes. I'm proposing that my daughter sits at a separate table with one other child and a staff member, whilst the other children have their cow's milk in open cups at other tables. I still feel really worried about her being in the same room as milk.
Right.
Should I expect the nursery to do more?
Okay. One moment. Let me think about that. Sorry. So it's about does the nursery, could they do more? Right. Right. Yes. Well, I think it's natural to start off to be worried because this is a new situation, young child going to nursery for the first time. And I remember just with my children who don't have food allergy, how I didn't want to let them go. Now, I think there are information sheets, and I think you may have one, an anaphylaxis campaign on starting school and nursery. So I really would point you in that direction, because that does sound a good idea, because you do want them to be included, and it's good to have the other child on the table as well. I think I'd want to be sure of their cleaning routines after milk being used and spills on the table, etc. And also that cups are washed thoroughly. And are there any other places where milk is going to be, or are there any other possibilities where it will come into contact? In addition, if they've been really helpful, that's excellent. Does that feel, I wonder if they're aware, and they will keep that they'll have your child in their mind kind of through the day, particularly around food. If you're convinced that they are, then that's really good. I think they just need to be aware and demonstrate to you that they are aware.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we've got time for just one more. And again, it's a focus on a child. My 10-year-old child has severe nut allergy, and we carefully avoid all foods with any nut ingredients or warnings, as we've been told by our doctor. I recently managed to miss a may contain nuts warning on an ice cream that was hard to see under the fold of the packaging. That's a frequent problem that I know people come across. But my child was fine and had no reaction. Would that mean that those ice creams are safe for him to eat now in future?
A definite no. May contain obviously isn't the same as contains nuts. There may not have been nuts in it in that particular one, but as it has a may contain on it, I would not risk it if the child has had anaphylaxis or is, you've been told that they have a severe nut allergy. So no, I just wouldn't risk anything that says may contain, even though a lot of the time it's manufacturers or ploy to get around the rules or not build a nut-free factory. No, don't have that ice cream again. I'd keep away from may contain.
It's great, because that's exactly the answer that we would give at the anaphylaxis campaign. Phew, that's great. As I say, we've got loads more questions, Andrew, so we will send them to you for your answers so that we can get those answers out to people.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the fantastic presentation this morning. And to everyone who's listening, don't forget, it's our awareness week this week, and support us if you can by raising awareness. That's the most important thing, and also by fundraising as well. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Andrew.
My pleasure, Lynn. Thank you.